Cadence.
Gill sucks the life out of the Benetton attack, or does it? Because they're foraging forward again, still coming, twisting and driving. That's a try. Bernasconi.
That's really cynical from Paul Budenholm. Knew exactly what he was doing. Big questions asked, or they have to be asked there of his actions. What a response from Benetton.
Everything being checked. 32 points at 25. They've just got to get the ball off the park now. History beckons here for Benetton. There's a flurry of bodies towards the rock. Hackett anywhere wrong said will do. What a night for Benetton.
Right, good afternoon everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rugby Scoop Podcast 2025. We are back. And currently we are watching the Sharks versus Bordeaux. Things not looking great in the last 10 minutes for the Sharks game. Of course, I'm not by myself. I'm joined by the usual crew. Hugh Griffin all the way in England. Jade Craig in Bloemfontein. Vuyo Zanga. Welcome back to 2025. Not in Russia, in South Africa, but one more week in SA, I understand, Vickers. I think there's a bit of a technical...
I think you went to check on the kids, or you went to do something. His wife sent him quickly.
Hello, South African Wi-Fi is letting me down.
Yeah. Did you hear?
No.
Oh,
I heard
okay.
what you said. All good, brother. Yeah, thank you, guys. Thank you, and Happy New Year to you all. Yeah, it's been a while since we've done this for me, obviously. But yeah, all good and good spirits.
All right. Jade Craig, how are things in Bloem?
All good. School's open, rugby on TV, so all good.
The stats man, Hugh Griffin, the gardener. How are you doing?
Good, thanks, Coop. Good to be back on. Enjoying watching 3 French rugby matches in a row today, UBB, Toulouse and Toulon. And I'm expecting 3 French victories. So we'll see how that turns out.
Expecting 3 French victories. Can you believe it? Anyway, without wasting any time, gentlemen, as usual, as we always start this show, news making headlines around the globe. First off, we're going down under in the land of the long white cloud. Wallace Satiti said to miss out on Super Rugby Pacific. He will undergo surgery on his left knee. Michael Hooper said to return to Super Rugby. Can you believe it? After a while, I think Eddie Jones might have deterred him from continuing playing rugby, but he seems to be keen to put on some boots again. Big one coming from Italy. Benetton beating La Rochelle, guys. Hey, URC influence. Hugh, what do you think of this result?
I don't think it's that much of a shock. It's the Italy national team, and I've been telling everyone for 2 years that La Rochelle aren't that team anymore, but no one wants to believe me. Every time I say, look, La Rochelle's team is mostly over 30, over 31, 32, and they've not been doing that well in the league, and they've lost to Leinster 3 times in a row. But no one wants to believe me. Everyone wants to say that, no, they're still the best team in the world. They aren't. They're not.
Fair enough. 2 members of the Ballers on a Budget Rugby Union. Jade, do you know which team I'm talking about here? Ballers on a Budget Rugby Union. They're based in Johannesburg. So Lions, Francke Horn and Edward van der Merwe are eyeing overseas opportunities at this current time. Nothing has been clear, but there's potential of some overseas interest from these two young Lion players. They are called the Ballers on a budget by the South Africans. Johan Goosen out with a knee injury. Vickers, I mean, I don't know if you've also maybe thought about this over the December period, also since last year. But Blue Bulls, I mean, depending on Goosen throughout the past 2 seasons, is it time to get a new fly-off into their mix, or a young fly-off into their mix?
Yeah, I think it is time. I mean, we've seen they bought Chamberlain, they brought in
Yeah,
Chamberlain, but we've seen Chamberlain from the Sharks. He was also at 10, at 15, so he was never a stable 10, if you could call
yeah,
it like that. But I think it's time. I think it's definitely time. They do have also, is it Van der Vaart? Van der Vaart. He came from Edinburgh, I think. Or yeah, I
yeah,
think he came from Edinburgh. So they do have a couple of guys, but obviously these are not established players at the moment. I think it's a matter of, as we discussed last year. I don't know if it's you guys if you've discussed it without me, but I still feel there was a massive opportunity on Sasha, which that was
yeah.
missed. But obviously now Sasha we see is just so many injuries, so it is a little bit
Fair.
tricky. It is tricky.
No, fair enough, fair enough. And another one then that's making headlines is Kobus Reinach Jade moving to the Stormers next season. It seems like the Stormers are getting more backs and not enough meat up front in their forward pack. I mean, looking at how they lost Marvin Orie last season, but now they've gone for a back. We thought maybe they would have opted to go for a forward player.
Yeah, no, we've all been saying and crying of it, Stormers need a little more depth up front. But I mean, they're also short at scrum off as well. I think it's Paul de Wet that's going to the bull here. So yeah, we're gonna have to look at it and see how Paul Reinach sits in there. I know there's a few young nines in the Cape, that's coming through. So maybe Paul Reinach is the guy to bring those guys through and get his experience. But I think he'll settle in well at the Stormers, Because looking at how Yankees played yesterday, I mean, Kobus Reinach had a similar running game to that in the way Yankees played yesterday. He complemented the Stormers. So I think we'll see more of that from Reinach next year.
No, fair. Sia Kolisi could be or should be or will be staying at the Sharks. So all the rumors going of him going to Cape Town have been put to bed. So at this point, it seems like the Sharks are willing to keep Kolisi in Durban. But obviously, that is a developing story. And next one is Exeter Chiefs have recruited Wallabies back row Tom Hooper for 2025-2026 Premiership season. That's a very odd acquisition by Exeter Chiefs. Also, the decision by Tom Hooper to leave Australia and go and play overseas, which will probably hamper his international expertise or experience with the Wallabies, and also build on that, because he only has about 10 international caps under his belt. You would think maybe he would have stayed maybe a bit longer, and then usually players don't go at the age of 23 to go play overseas, right? Especially if they're already in the setup or in the Wallabies framework. But nonetheless, moving on, our topics for today, we will be chatting about Investec Championship. Obviously, the Sharks currently are playing against Bordeaux. Maybe we can kick off things with that, Vickers, seeing what is currently transpiring over in France at the moment. What do you think of this first half from the Sharks at the moment?
Yeah, it was quite for me. It wasn't a good showing. I think they didn't even score points when when Bordeaux had a yellow card. So it goes back to the same thing. It's for me. I still don't see what the plan is. I honestly still don't. So it's very hard to comment on that when I don't see where's their foundation. So yes, they got 2 tries. I mean that was good, but still, I think they could have put more points. They could have had Bordeaux in the a couple of times. They had him on their line, and they didn't
Yeah.
capitalize. Which is obviously we always say in these kind of competitions you have to be clinical. When you get into the 22, you have to make them pay.
No, 100%. I think it's a similar thing that took place yesterday between Leinster and Bath as well, in terms of being clinical at this level. I mean, look at now Luku going under the sticks and extending that gap because Sharks decided to kick the ball. They're literally 4 meters, 2 meters away from the 22-meter line, and they decide to kick the ball. There's no continuity. There's no trust in the particular process, which then goes back to what you were saying, Vickers, in terms of not having the plan and not having the identity, right, and the platform to be created for them to actually score tries. They started like a house on fire in that first half, scoring 2 quick tries because they were using the pace and the speed of those breakdowns. And then once the gas, once once the gas or their foot came off the gas, basically, things slowed down. Bordeaux came into the game, and then it was 12-12, then it was 19-12. Now we're looking at 26-12, and it's going to be tough, obviously, for the Sharks to get back into the game after this particular element. I mean, Hugh, your thoughts on the current situation?
Sorry,
Oh, Vickers. Yeah.
Sorry, Hugh. I just want to say also, I mean, one of the tries that they scored, there were 2 offloads near the line, like they just threw the ball. You could see that they were just throwing the ball there, and then Yao goes and does the same thing on a defensive regain on defense, and he throws it straight into the hands of the Bordeaux 14, a penalty, and he went and scored. So it's just, for me, it's just, surely at this level, if you're gonna be kick return, there should be a plan. There should be a plan on how you're gonna exit from that kickoff, for example. From that regain. Do you go one ruck in and then box kick, or do you go one ruck in and then see if the blind side is open? So there should be a plan. But like like I'm saying is that, how can a player just throw the ball like that? Because it is scrappy. It's not, you can't play professional rugby of scraps.
Griff?
Yeah, I kind of expected this game to be scrappy, but Bordeaux, like to play a very unstructured game. They like to play loose. They like to get the ball wide. They don't want to see rucks particularly. And the Sharks, when the Sharks do score tries, it tends to be very unstructured. It tends to be just down to some individual talent or 2 of their very good players linking up. So I expect a lot of tries to be scored in this game. We already have seen that. I think what's interesting is that Bordeaux, who aren't known for their scrum, are shoving the Sharks backwards more than Toulouse did. So Toulouse in the scrum battle was very messy. It was very both sides going down. Whereas in this one, Bordeaux got a penalty on close to the Sharks line and opted for the scrum and shoved it back. So I think that's quite interesting. But just have a look at the set piece for UBB here. Union. Here we go. So their scrum success is okay, but not amazing. So I think that tells a bit of a story about where the Sharks' pack is at the moment. But honestly, this game's kind of going how I thought it would. Yeah. Bordeaux have scored at least 40 points in, I think, 70. Sorry, they've scored at least 40 points in 7 Champions Cup games in a row. So I don't see any reason why that won't change.
Oh, that is massive. Bordeaux might not be great at scrum time, but I know who knows a lot about the scrums. Jade, your thoughts on this set piece element as well, right? Looking at last week and how the Sharks set piece was, and looking at this week, it seems to be a continuing effect within their game as well. So the scrums haven't been great. Someone mentioned last week regarding missing Etzebeth, maybe in that engine room at lock, right? To give them that second shove for the props or the front row. I mean, what do you think of the Sharks scrum? Because we see that they have Springboks from 1 to 3, right? 1, 2, and 3, and some of the guys that come off the bench.
Yeah, no, it's true what you're saying. I mean, you expect more from the Sharks back, especially with Ox and Bongi and Koch and those guys in there. Even the guys on the bench, on bad scrummages. I mean, they should be dominant at this level. I think also it's a case of teams also studying the Sharks back, putting a lot of attention into Ox in the way he scrums. I mean, we all know that he's undoubtedly the best loose head in the world at the moment and one of the strongest scrummages in the world. But I just feel that I think that, there's a lot of prep that goes in. The French team as well. All the years, the French has valued the scrum as well. So they're not just a fly by night when it comes to scrum. They put a lot of attention in scrum time, a lot of studying, a lot of work, a lot of preparation going into scrum time. So yeah, it can be. They do miss Itzebeth. Anybody would miss Itzebeth in the engine room, especially at tight deadlock. But I think it also comes down to the preparation, they put out into Lusitan. And I mean, both of those teams are world class. So if you have a world class team, obviously you have a world class pack as well. I mean, it's not this international props coming against international props. So I think it comes down to preparation as well. And I think it comes down to, the studying Ox, studying the likes of Koch, studying the likes of Bongi, in France. So I think it comes down to that as well, in terms of the French team's preparation.
No, fair enough, fair enough. Vickers, you had a question. I mean, I think it's one of the situations from this particular game regarding the line out and the law. Maybe this could be an element of education from our side as well in terms of the law, what is expected, what is our interpretation. Because at the end of the day, it is the interpretation, and then from there, it's also how an official kind of reads the game, and obviously, yeah, those decisions are based on those particular 2-pointers, but not entirely only those 2-pointers. There's also other elements that reflect on that particular conversation. Vickers, your question regarding line out and the law was what exactly?
Yeah, I just wanted to check, Scoop, because I haven't read the full law, how it's explained within the law book. So, as far as I know, it's said that if you do a line-out throw and the opposition team doesn't compete, the ball can go skew, and you'll be allowed to play. Am I right in saying that?
It's mostly, it doesn't say the ball must go skew. It just says that if the other team does not compete, especially when players are being lifted and jumping, right?
Okay.
So for me, that's the first take on that one.
All right, because so my next question would have been, when you do like you form a lineout, but then you throw it to the front lifter, the first guy in the lineout, but then he grabs it on the outside shoulder, which means obviously it's towards his side. Can he then be allowed to play? Because they're competing.
In that one, even though it might be deemed as non-compete or not competing, because both players are on the ground, then it's definitely a skew throw, because then it removes any option of competing if you catch it on the other side of your shoulder towards your team or towards your scrum off.
Yeah.
I mean, if we standing in the line out, I'm standing next to you, half a meter apart rather, and the ball goes over my head, and let's say Jade is throwing to my team and the ball goes over my head, we don't jump, both of us. At least it's given you an option or an opportunity to actually maybe compete for that ball. And then I would allow for the team to play on. But then if the ball goes towards the left ear or towards my scrum off, on the outside shoulder, as you've said as well, then I would then you must deem that as a skew throw. Then it would be a scrum on the 5, basically for the team that wasn't throwing.
So basically,
On
if
15.
you're doing, you remember the Springboks had that lineout where they would come form as if they're gonna jump and they'll just throw the ball. So does that obviously constitute the same thing, that if the guy who's catching that ball, if it's on the outside shoulder, then it should be taken as a skew throw?
As a skew throw, because they both didn't jump right in the air. If they 100%. So I would interpretation that would be deemed as a skew throw, and it doesn't mean that just because now the teams or the law has suggested that if teams don't compete, so when they talk about competing, so if we're both on the ground, we both have an opportunity to compete. If my team lifts and your team doesn't lift, then you've removed the opportunity to compete in that sense.
Yeah, those are the loopholes that obviously coaches will be looking at. So it's something that's interesting.
Yeah. That's basically that part in this in that law element of the game.
Yeah.
Now moving along. Yeah. Is there something you wanted to say there, Vickers?
No. All good.
Oh. So moving along, Hugh Griffin, did you get to watch Leinster versus Bath?
Some of it. It was at the same time as my Scarlets playing their van. So I only actually tell a lie. I watched it again this morning. So yes, I did watch it.
Fair enough. From a lot of South Africans' perspective, Ninaba at Leinster, Van Graan at Bath, who's doing amazing work, by the way, in the Premiership. But looking at the log, I mean, that's the number one team in England at this point. And Leinster are in the top 3, top 4 sides in the URC as well. But I mean, fans from either island, Welsh, some Scottish, really fans are blaming officials once again in this particular segment, in this particular aspect as well. Almost screaming and shouting like Arsenal fans complaining about the disallowed goal from last night, basically, which deflected off the hand. Clear and obvious, right? But nonetheless, Hugh, since you're in that British realm, British and Irish realm, right? What is this hate on Leinster before we get into the game nitty gritty stuff? Because it feels like anytime Leinster plays and any favorable or rub of the green decisions that they get on games, everyone starts fuming, everyone starts talking about Leinster getting favors from referees, everyone starts going, oh, we knew it. No one is ever going to beat Leinster at home at the Aviva. But I mean, what is this hate? Because it's hate. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's a big hate element going around in Irish football.
Yeah,
against
so
Leinster.
it's not. I don't think it's complicated. It's the same as everybody hates Man United, because Leinster were the team that won for ages. They're the biggest team. They've got the best squad, and they're undefeated so far this season. And they've been okay. They haven't won anything in the last couple of years, but they're the most successful team in the Celtic League in its different variations. That's now the URC, and yeah, they do get the rub of the green with referees, as all big teams do. If you're a successful team, you're going to get the 50-50s, you're going to get the 40-60s even. It's just what they do, but they've earned that through being the best team. People make a big deal out of their budget. Yes, they do have a big budget. Yes, there is a disparity between them and the rest. But let's not go around acting like none of the other teams are rich. I always draw the comparison with Toulouse. They've got money coming out of their ears. They spend a ridiculous amount of money, and no one seems to be bothered about that. But with Leinster, it's not okay for some reason. The fact is that the vast majority of Leinster's team is homegrown. It comes from their academy, which isn't the case for a lot of other teams. There's obviously they've got the big rivalry with Munster, and Munster fans are very vocal and very tribal, shall we say, and Leinster are their biggest rival. So you hear that side of it. So I don't really have the hate for Leinster this season. I'm finding them quite interesting in terms of their evolution, the way they're using Snyman and Geordie Barrett in particular, their evolution. And you did this thread scoop, which I really enjoyed, about their defence as well, which I think is really interesting as well. So I'm enjoying them as a neutral. It's just people are just a bit bored of them winning all the time. Really, that's all it is.
Jaden, Vuyo, did you guys watch the Bath and Leinster before I continue with my questions?
No, sorry, I missed that one.
Okay, fair enough. Jade?
No, I just caught up on it on the highlights. I didn't watch the whole game, but
Super sport package.
Listen. No. Listen, and I actually think it's actually poor from us South Africans, and I think a lot of people suffer from this. I think the average South African fan as well. We tend not to, stay up or to prioritize watching those games live. We think your team don't play, where your country's team is. A team from the country.
What's going on? Why is the silence?
We can hear you, Vuyo.
Yeah, we can hear you, mate.
Boy,
he's back in South Africa. He needs to go back to Russia.
He's struggling in the Eastern Cape. He's struggling. You stop using your neighbor's Wi-Fi, bro.
Yeah.
Okay,
fair enough. The 40, by the way, just like we said afterwards.
Yeah, 100%.
But I feel like I'm saying, Scoop, I just think it's a problem in South Africa, that we do have. We don't prioritize and watch countries or teams where countries not playing in. And I think it's so there's so much rugby on TV and there's so many games to watch. So I think it's a few games to just watch the highlights. Yeah, I think I'm glued to it at times, but yeah. I didn't watch the whole game. I just watched the highlights. But what I can say about it is, so their champion team. I mean, they through to the next round. So I think they managed to get the win, and Nina will take the W.
Yeah.
And look at the default, and they'll move on from there. I think they'll just take the W and move.
No, fair. But now I'm gonna put the questions then back to Hugh Griffin, and maybe we can have a short chat about basically Leinster versus Bath yesterday. Hugh, Bath started off like a house on fire, almost similar situation to what the Sharks did today. First half, they were thereabout, but I mean, Bath also not converting a lot of their opportunities in last night's game. And I don't know what happened to Finn Russell, but he was away for a good period of that first half, and then he came back into the game. But I'm not sure what had happened there with regards to him not participating for about 10 to 15 minutes. But regardless of that, you spoke about how well Leinster are using Jordie Barrett. He seems to be popping up everywhere. When you look at the Leinster game plan, and if you look at RG Snyman as well, the way they've used him off the bench. I mean, he came into that game, he scored 2 tries back to back. He won a lot of opposition lineouts. He was actually the guy that they had to give the ball to in terms of go forward. He was at first receiver at times. He was there when it was picking up and going. He was there when it was when they had to maul. You found him along the trenches as well. And the way they changed their shape on attack, all of a sudden they became very narrow in that second half and started running through the middle against Bath yesterday. But I mean, from the impact you've seen from Jordie Barrett and RG Snyman, is this what maybe Leinster has been looking for in the past? Or, because when I look at now Sam Pendergrast at 10, for example, they've tended to lose a lot of their shape on attack compared to when they had a Johnny Sexton, for example. But I mean, from these pointers that I've mentioned, I mean, what comes to mind for you? And also, I mean, what do you think of the points that I've raised?
Yeah, so I do think that Leinster have evolved this year, and it's taken a bit of time for it to start clicking. And it does, now in hindsight, the signings of RG Snyman and Jordie Barrett, basically, it's not just kind of showing off. They were actually signed with a purpose, with a game plan in mind. And I think having Robbie Henshaw, Gary Ringrose, and Jordie Barrett on the pitch all at the same time gives them so much flexibility with the structures they can have, because Jordie was wearing 12, Henshaw was wearing 13, and Ringrose was wearing 14. But there was times where Jordie was on the wing. There were times where Jordie was at fullback. There was times where Henshaw was at 12. So it was kind of, towards the end, in that final quarter, it was kind of no numbers rugby in the back line from Leinster, positionless rugby, which I think is a bit of a Toulouse influence maybe. But there were times where they were playing keep ball alive and they were offloading and they were avoiding ruck, and that is very unlike Leinster. So if I just have a quick look at how many rucks there were in the game for Leinster, normally you would expect well north of 100. So they got 101. So that's very un-Leinster. So normally you would expect well north of 100 for Leinster. So so I think there's an evolution there, and I am enjoying watching it. And Caelan Doris is an unbelievable rugby player, and Jordie Barrett is coming and is performing to a fantastic level, I have to say. If you look at Leinster's stats, Jordie Barrett is top 1 or 2 for most of the stats. I think he's been unbelievable for them.
No, fair enough. And then there was a situation in the game as well, right, where a lot of the fans are not really entirely pleased of what happened regarding the Bath prop. He copped a yellow card in the first half for a high tackle, but I mean, he was beaten by Jameson Gibson Park from his sidestep, right? There was no way a 150 kilogram prop was gonna get a halfback who is 80 kilograms on quick feet movement, sudden change of direction, right? In that situation, I mean, yeah, he copped it on the chin. Got while he got beaten by the quick feet, so he copped a yellow card in that first half. But then second half started, he came back. This particular prop that is from Bath, and Bath were struggling at scrum time. I think there must have been 3 or 4 penalties in a row at scrum time against Bath. So they were under pressure or under the pump during scrum time. But then there was the one particular scrum, probably the 5th or 6th scrum later on in the game. And after copping so many penalties, the same prop who copped a yellow for a high tackle got a red card. Did you have a question around this element, Hugh, about the law especially?
Yeah, so it's a very unique circumstance that I don't think anybody can remember seeing before, getting a second yellow, once for foul play, but once for scrums. And it kind of depends for me, because if that yellow card, and I suppose it could happen in different places as well, because is that yellow card for him, or is it a cumulative thing? So is he just taking a yellow card on behalf of that scrum, or is he the one who's repeatedly infringing? If he's the one who he himself has given away 3 penalties, let's see if I can dig out how many penalties were given away. But is it him himself who's given away the penalty, or is he taking a yellow card on behalf of the scrum? Like, for example, if you know how in like when you're in the red zone, right, and you're on defense and you give away 3 penalties in a row, and the referee warns you and then gives a yellow card to the next penalty. If that's someone's second yellow, it's a brave call from the referee to give that, because that might be there could be a scenario where a player's committed an unlucky high shot and then has picked up a yellow card for his team, and it's a cumulative one. He's only given away 2 penalties in the whole game, and he's got red carded for 2 yellow cards. Just quickly on Ben Obano, he did give away 5 penalties in the game, so that suggests it was him. But it's just that kind of scenario where you're getting a red card for a team yellow card, if that makes sense.
100%. No, I agree. You make a valid point there. Vuyo and Jade, also, if you guys want to jump in on this one in terms of how you guys want to see it happen, as obviously, what are we? We are stakeholders, right, of the game, because we pay subscription fees to watch these games. So we are stakeholders. We can have views regarding these elements, but also it's not views that can be thrown out the window. It's still valid stuff that we want to talk about. Hugh, you make a good point there in terms of if somebody copped a high tackle, getting beaten by sudden change of movement and etc., almost similar to the example that we gave earlier about the Bath prop. But for him, he had been penalized for either collapsing the scrum, boring in, or hinging. So he had been part and parcel of the problem at scrum time. So having copped so many penalties, first it was the yellow in the first half, and then having copped so many penalties at scrum time, I understand what you're saying, but at the same time, also the referee needs to make a decision. Otherwise, it becomes a problem that continues throughout the game, because there was still another 25 to 30 minutes to play in that game. So it is a tough one for a spectator. I understand, but at the same time, you're trying to limit as many infringements as possible from a team that's under the pump in that situation. Jade, and then Vickers, you can jump in.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you on that. But for me, I just feel that as a coach, also, you got to look at the situation. And if my prop is already on a warning in terms of, getting he got a yellow card already and he's on the warning at scrum time for consistent penalties or for glashing the scrum a few times. I mean, if he's copying it from the referee, you as a coach have to make a decision there as well. You can do a few dark arts there as well if it is a replacement, but we don't want to get into that. But for me, I feel you as a coach, you need to pull the player and protect the player, because it doesn't mean at times, the player is a bad scrummager. Maybe the opposition prop just got the rub of the green and he's just got him, in his pocket. He can't do anything about it. I, for one, don't like that. I, for one, feel that, if you're going backwards at scrum time, And yes, if it's in the red zone and you collapse, then there's a possibility of a penalty try. Give the penalty try. Give the yellow card. But if you are continuously a whole game, you being slaughtered at scrum time, there's a chance of sending off every single prop for repeated infringement. So for me, I don't like that. I think something that World Rugby has to look at as well when it comes to scrum time, especially the laws when it comes to yellow cards as well, because it can get messy. Like yesterday was a situation we got messy with a guy who got a red card. You won't get, for the viewers listening, you won't be most likely suspended or cited unless he's the high tackle, he's deemed as a red card and gets cited, but he won't get a suspension for the 2 yellow cards that he got. I think he'll just go on. Is that right, Scoop? In the safety commission won't suspend him, right? If there's nothing wrong with his tackle. But what I feel is that, we need to come together as World Rugby. We need to look at this as well, because if you're struggling at scrum time and your reserve proper scrum is struggling at scrum time and you're giving away penalties, so you can feel the risk of being 13, 14 men on the field for a long time, and it's game changing. So they have to look at something where and how to penalize these props, because like we said, that scrumming is not just it's not just props, it's prop. We spoke about earlier the Sharks maybe missing even Itzebeth. So I think that it's a collective team duty. So it's not just the whole pack, is working together at scrum time. It's not just to do on the props. Oh yes, the prop does collapse and so, but I mean it's a whole pack, it's a whole team, and he's taking the card for the team really.
Yeah, I mean, in this situation, it's 2 yellow cards. So basically, it's not a straight red for a head-on-head collision where he needs to do or take those tackle lessons. So this one, it'll be deemed by the commissioners. Obviously, he probably does miss 1 or 2 games, depending on the length of the punishment that will be determined by the commissioners in this situation. But I think Vickers, you also wanted to chime in on this particular topic and share what your thoughts are. I mean, obviously from a coaching perspective, and also what you think of of that red card.
Is that me? Yeah, Scoop. So I think, look, Hugh made some very valid points. Unfortunately, I couldn't hear what Jade's comments were. But for me, when it's a what do you call it, a foul play, it's more than understandable to give a 2 yellow cards, which is a red card. But once it starts getting technical, it is a little bit more difficult. I feel there should have been a little bit of leeway, or we should, or those situations should be separated from the foul play type of thing, because at the end of the day, as much as the ref is giving a call on the is giving a call on the scrum, it's not his speciality. He is also learning on how to manage that scrum. So to make a brave call and give a yellow card from that technical aspect, that has an influence in the game. What we always talk about, we always say, imagine this was a rugby final, World Cup final. Would the ref make that same call? Because at the end of the day, it has an influence in the game, and it's the ref's perception or perception of what is seen, and is making a call that could damage the game for the rest of it, of what's left of it. So for me, I feel like it's a little bit more difficult. We should be able to allow those technical aspects to maybe not to be carded, maybe to be white carded, and say, coaches, I'm giving this as a white card for you guys, and if you don't change the prop, or if you guys don't, like, something must happen. I think we need to find a solution where you don't get a second yellow card. Yes, you did something stupid in the first half. You come out of the second half, you have a scrum in the first 5 minutes, and you've been having penalties from the first half. Now the ref has to give you a yellow card, and then you cop a double yellow, then it becomes red. So it is difficult for me. I feel like when it's technical stuff like that, we should be looking at a different card or different perspective on how it's viewed.
Do we have to give a red card for 2 yellows? Can we just, you can have as many yellows as you like in a game? What difference would that make?
Oh,
No, but he's onto something there. He's onto something. So maybe a card for foul play, and then a card for a technical foul, or I don't know, maybe cynical gets in comes in the category as foul play. But I mean, a technical a card for repeated infringement or something like that, doesn't fall in the same bracket as the card for foul play, so that we don't get the situation.
no fair.
And also, Jade, looking at that, when a team gets a team warning, say now there's a couple of penalties in a row in the pressure zone. You are the guy who got a yellow card in the first 5 minutes of the game. Now you are in the second half and you've done nothing wrong with the whole game. You spent your 10 minutes, you came back, and now you do one mistake because of the team that was repeated infringements. You get a yellow card, and then it's a double yellow. Yeah, maybe there is something there, gents. I think there's something there. We need to look at these kind of situations because it really can mess up a rugby game.
Nah, fair points, gents. Fair points. I think it's probably going to be one of the things that gets looked at going forward. I mean, almost like an NBA game, right? Players can make fouls and they go sit maybe for 1 minute, only up until a player gets ejected, because you're allowed to make about 4, if I'm not mistaken, in the whole game per person. So, I mean, if you make 3 and you've set out probably 3 minutes for the entire duration of the game, you still come back. We still got the quality of the match with the quality of the players still available to play. But obviously, then when it comes to foul play, then we become strict. We send the players off permanently, or we send the players off with a yellow card. But I mean, if the yellow card is still going to stay a yellow with 10 minutes off, maybe there's some leeway that could be under. I mean, there's a point to be made there, Hugh, and I like the points you guys have also raised. Maybe thinking ahead for the sport that we all love. Still coming ahead, guys. We're still gonna talk about Jake White's comments. We're still gonna look at the Stormers and their line-out problems. We're looking at Francke Horn versus Cameron Hanekom versus Ivan Roos. And then we're going to touch on the Six Nations build-up, and then from there we have an open mic session where guys will share some of their thoughts, but not delaying any further. Jade, Marvin Orie left the Stormers last season, and looking at the current Stormers setup and looking at last night's game and how many lineouts on attack, where the Stormers had, I don't know, man. Their lineouts are easy to read. They lost a lot of lineouts. The connection between the hooker and the jumpers is off throughout even yesterday's game. It's been a problem for the Stormers now this season, that they don't have a good lineout caller because Marvin Orie has left. But looking at the Stormers lineouts, I mean, cheapest. What needs to happen at this point? We see they're buying Kobus Reinach, who is a backline player. I know you said that, they need another halfback, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're missing the engine room a lot. What's happening?
Yeah, no. It's true. And I mean, looking at the setup, the lineup setup, I mean, they don't have real mobile jumpers there, so they lack a little bit of mobility. I mean, Sama Murat, he's not that mobile as a jumper compared to, like Marvin Orie, like maybe a Franco Moster or Lotte Jager, who's a little more mobile than him at lineup time. And I think the aerial skills is better. I think, coaches today, they talk about the battle in the air, so I think the aerial skills is much a touch better than him. So I really think they need to look at it, and they need to restructure their lineouts, maybe setting more, or maybe adding speed to it, maybe quickening up their lineups, but they need to do something. They just restructure, reshape the lineup. They've got even Roos back now, who is a good lineout jumper, so he does assist him. So, I mean, he is a real target there. So I think there's also a timing issue as well there in terms of the jumpers and throw. I mean, we've all been criticizing Dweeb for years regarding his throwing. But yeah, so for me, I think they need to just reset and restructure that lineup a little bit, just tweak, maybe change 1 or 2 jumpers, their positions, and you'll see they'll get more line-out ball, especially on their throw. But it is difficult when you have a guy like Snyman and Barrett who's not that mobile at line-out time compared to the other locks going around. So yeah, I think we need to look at it overall. That whole line-out need to get the right guys in the right position. So at line-out time. So if you're looking at it, like for example, I don't know, maybe you can share impact with what they did at the Kings at the time. But from my experience, is that you always want your mobile jumper, to be more in the middle and floating. So he's quick on his feet, he's quicker up, and you're looking at your guy two as your more static lock. He's the one jumping at two. So you always saw in the past, a guy like Victor Matfield in the middle and Buck is sport at two, and you see where the box as well, where Evan jumps at two, and then you have the other lock moving in at four, and going down to six, interchanging there is more mobile. So I think that's something that you need to look at from the Stormers, restructuring that lineup. Looking also at who's coming through. I mean, I don't see any locks really coming through there, but I mean, they've got Ben Jason Dixon, they've got Evan Roos, they were good lineup options. So I think they need to really restructure the lineup and maybe go to a shorter lineup and just getting back to basics with it.
Vickers?
Sorry, Scoop. Like I said, guys, my internet is terrible. Can you repeat the question, please?
Oh, you need to go back to Moscow. No ways. Moscow is calling. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you 100%.
No, we're chatting about the Stormers and their line-out issues, obviously, but in a general aspect of what transpired yesterday, Ed Russing, I mean, what do you think of the Stormers then? A lot of people are talking about, yes, they could have won the game, but obviously it's the same issues, right, for South African teams when they travel overseas. It's the first 40 minutes, competitive, and having chances, not being clinical. We've seen the Sharks earlier today. We've seen the Blue Bulls when they travel. We've seen now the Stormers when they're traveling as well. I mean, they were close, but not close enough. And also they're having line-out issues as well as we speak, when they weren't around buying Kobus Reinach instead of adding some manpower into those lineouts, and how they're missing a guy like Marvin Orie, who was a great lineout caller for them in the past seasons.
Yeah, Scoop. That's actually when you said it, buying a guy like Kobus Reinach who's gonna cost you a lot of money to put the ball in the scrum, whereas you need someone who's actually gonna run your engine room in terms of your lineouts. So I don't know. For me, I think it's a bad call. It's a bad call. Obviously, they do need. They do need the quality. They still do need the scrum off. But that would have been a nice thing to have, is to go and look for a lock and find a lock that you can pay the big bucks and hopefully, obviously, get the job done. I mean, even a guy like maybe Francke Horn would have been good for the Stormers because he's coming with a lot of experience. He's done the job at the Lions back in the days at Super Rugby level. So it's one of those things, man, that when it comes to director of rugby, when it comes to the head coach's vision for the current squad, what are they talking about? What makes them understand where they want to go, and what do they need to make sure that they get there? And I think those are the conversations that I would love to be a fly in the boardroom of the Stormers and just hear what the coaches are talking about.
Yeah.
And in terms of the South African team, Scoop, that makes me so angry. I don't understand how everyone that comes to South Africa, okay, not everyone, but most of the teams, you pump them by 60 points. The Lions are winning by 60 points. The Bulls are winning by 60 points.
And then the Dragons and Stade Francais are rubbish, though, to be fair.
Yeah, and then but if that game was over there, Hugh, in Wales,
Sorry. Oh.
it wouldn't be 60 points. It would be a close game. And I think, for me, I don't know, are we so comfortable in just letting away games as away games? Yeah, it's okay if let's try get a bonus point instead of the fight. I think, for me, that I don't know, if I was a coach in this era, I think I would probably be having a lot more tough press conferences. Yeah, press conferences, because I would say it as it is. Because why make excuses, guys? You're in professional sports. Time for making excuses is over. High performance sports is making sure that you deliver a high performance quality entertainment for your people, for your sponsors, for your province, for your union, just to make sure that nothing goes as acceptable.
Hugh, do you want to comment on the initial question, or can we jump on to then Jake White's comments regarding what Vuyo is talking about?
Is the question why is South African teams so bad away from home?
Well, the initial question was about Stormers and their lineouts.
Oh, the Stormers set pieces bad is because they're incredibly disorganized generally as a team.
Fair. And then the second question then is South African teams being bad at playing away, because then
I don't know, because we're now starting to see teams being able to go to, not all teams obviously, but some teams be able to go to South Africa and win. So that's a worrying trend if South African teams just can't win outside South Africa, but teams are now learning how to go down to South Africa and win, then obviously something's not right there.
No, fair.
Is it just money? Is it all down to the money that these visiting teams can spend on their preparation and travel compared to the South Africans? I don't know.
Oh, well, Jake White said that the recipe for South African teams to win is basically taking the Springbok template, which is having bomb squads, which is having more players for each position, mixing up the old and the young players within the squad. Having bigger squads for depth, because what's working at Springbok level is not or it hasn't been done yet at club level. That's what Jake White is complaining about, or that's what he is making excuses when it comes to South African teams not winning overseas, because that was the question. And he said he's being genuinely honest by saying that. But I mean, if you are in Jake White's shoes, you've got Patrice Motsepe, who's the richest man in Africa. You've got Johan Rupert, who's the richest man in Africa. And obviously, if you compare with some of the people from abroad as well, so the Blue Bulls do have the pockets to buy the players they want. Hence, they do have the amount of players they have. They've got a lot of internationals, former Springbok players within their squad, within their setup. So this excuse of, we don't have enough depth. I mean, they came to France and who did they play last week or 2 weeks back? But they had cast. They had a good showing in that first half, and they didn't use any big names in that team for that game against Cast as well. But they had a very good showing for that first 40 to 60 minutes. But at the same time, when do we look at coaches before we start looking at the depth of the squad, right? That's what I want to know. When do we look at the coaching aspect before we're looking at the depth? Because Jake White does have the depth, he does have the players, but what is he coaching that so-called B team that travels to France? What is he then coaching the team that plays at Loftus? Because we saw them losing against the Warriors in the final last year at home. So before we start talking about depth and not having the right size, etc., because now Jake has been at this job for what, 4-5 years with the Bulls, and it's still the same thing over and over. When do we start looking at him as a coach before we start looking at him talking about bigger depth, bigger squads, bigger money, bigger this, bigger that? He just wants, but he's not giving. So when do we look at him in this situation? Vickers.
Yeah, look, Scoop, the one thing that I wanted to talk about was what Hugh made a comment in terms of preparation. We must also remember the South African teams get the same amount of time that they get that the overseas teams get here. So, and yes, the biggest factor is the conditions, because of for example, the conditions are cold. It's cold up there, and most of the time you don't get to train indoor. You train outside in your fully kitted situation, and then you play in the cold. So yeah, it does happen. But France is a little bit warmer than the rest of obviously Europe. So there's no excuse. And France, as far as I know, I don't think France plays in any artificial pitches. They play in all grass pitches. So
I think there's two in
there's
France
two.
who have artificial.
Yeah, but South Africa plays mostly in grass pitches. It's exactly the same situation as home. I would understand if we were playing in artificial pitches like Glasgow pitch, maybe the Cardiff pitch. Like if we're playing on even the Munster one, if we're playing in artificial pitches when we're over there a lot, I would understand the situation, the dynamics. But then why don't in South Africa we start investing in the top artificial 4G pitch so that our guys can start training in those pitches when the week of the games that they're playing or 2 weeks before the games that they play there in those kind of situations, because that is what is high performance. So exactly what you're saying, Scoop, is that at some point the excuses need to stop. The question needs to be, what are the discussions that are happening in the boardroom? And if you have the budget, what's stopping you from signing the right players?
Jade, too quiet there in Bloom. Way too quiet.
Uh, no. Look, I agree in terms of the 4G pitches, but I mean, it's a global thing. I mean, everybody's struggling with it. If you don't play on the 4G pitch and you go, and even, if you're based overseas and you're playing there, you're going to struggle. I'm not sure the availability of 4G pitches in Africa, but I mean, if you're looking at investing money, and it would be something wise for the Sharks and the Bulls who have bucks there now just to get a practice pitch, a 4G practice pitch, just prep the guys before they go overseas. So if we was actually looking from a coach's perspective, it's actually correct, I do agree with him with that. But yeah, for me, it's the African teams and traveling and everything. I wanted to get to it, but I think the next segment will be about Jake White's comments, and I mean, it's to do with that as well. The whole concept is to do with that as well. We mentioned that bringing the likes of Frans van Boster back to the Stormers would help them. But you're sitting with Frans van Boster, Peter Steph, Damon Darland, Jesse Kriel, Paf de Klerk, all of those guys playing in Japan. I can understand the guys playing in Europe. I can understand your Snyman and Apollos and those guys. But those guys in Japan should be prime targets for the likes of the Bulls, like a Jake White, who looking to strengthen the squad, for the likes of the Sharks, for the likes of the Storms, especially from next year when they do get the money and they do get the money from from TV rights and from the UFC and from the domestic Champions Cup. So once you're getting that, the dividends and the shareholders fees back. So I feel that South Africa should really look at it, and South African teams should really look at it and targeting those guys playing in Japan and bringing them home, so that we can get our squad stronger with them. I think they'll aid the squad. I think the experience, they'll have coming back. I mean, all of those guys are about 30 or so. So I think we can learn a hell of a lot from them. And maybe we should just look at it like going the way that we went with Katley Arendse and letting guys taking a year or two sabbatical to go play in Japan instead of signing these long-term contracts to play in Japan. So I think that's something we can look at. I know it's got to do with Jake White. We was complaining as well as we don't have the depth to compete on the UFC and the championship. I mean the Champions Cup. So maybe this is something that we can do and we can look at, because I mean if you have those guys back instead of playing in Japan, they will strengthen the African team, because I mentioned 3 or 4 world-class players there.
Hugh, you done?
I'm done.
Vickers, are you?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, I think that Wi-Fi there in the Eastern Cape, load shedding, is problematic. Is very problematic. Nonetheless, guys, moving along. I mean, South Africa has the depth in terms of having good number 8s currently. I mean, we've seen how much attention that Cameron Hanekom has been getting over the past couple of seasons. We've seen the amount of attention that a player like Evan Roos has been getting over the past couple of seasons. One player that's not being looked at, Vickers, Francke. Vickers is gone now. Load shedding in South Africa is intense. There he is. I mean, I'm gonna put it on you, Jade. Then, looking at a player like Francke Horn at this point at the Lions, I mean, he's not getting as much attention as his counterparts in Ivan Roos and in Cameron Hanekom. But I mean, this player is making inroads. He is making the hard yards. He is breaking tackles. He's making meters. He's carrying well. When you've seen him play, right? What would you say is different from an Ivan Roos and a Cameron Hanekom in this sense for a guy like Francke Horn to get over the line, maybe to get the invitation that he warrants from a Rassie Erasmus?
I think Frankie Horn is a tad more physical than the two. I mean, speaking of, I think he's a little bit bigger than the two. He's more like a Jasper Visser, whereas a Hanekom looks like an all-rounder. I mean, I've been so impressed with him. He's an all-rounder. He can do everything. He's good over the ball. He can link up play, sweeps in the background. So I think Frankie Horn is more like your Jasper Visser, your hard carriers. Gets over the advantage line. Although he might be big, but I mean he does have speed as well. So I think that's a difference between the two. Even Roos is more. It suits more the Stormer style, the open play, the open game plan. That suits him, He's a strong carrier, so but I mean he's a good link up player, running off offloads, getting off gaps, getting through off gaps. That's his kind of style, fast, he's got paces, he moves. So I think he's more in terms of test rugby, doesn't really fit the profile where a guy like Jasper Visser and Hanekom, and now we're forgetting Kwacha and Orie as well, they took, because they are options at like. So I think that's who Rassie is looking at. Jasper Visser is the number one at the moment. You can see the way he plays, the way Rassie wanted. He's going to play to carry on, get over the advantage line, to make so many carries within the game, to get post-contact meters, continue to run for 50 minutes, so and then train Kwacha on the field. So that's more or less what Rassie wants to do with his number 8. Whereas, a guy like Cornel Hanekom, he's his second season now, but he looks like he has more of an all-round package. He's good at line-up time, he's good over the ball, he's a good carrier, he can link up play as well. We saw him yesterday, he's all over the field. So I think he's one, once a guy like Peter Steff and Police retire, he will put his hand really, really up for the pop team, and we'll see more in the pop team. But now I think of getting the balance in the loose forwards. I think it's Jasper Visser, Orie and Kwacha Smith. Those are the first three options I take before you look at Francke Horn or at Cornel Hanekom, even say even the Roos. So I think that's what we're looking at. We have to look at the whole balance of the loose forwards at the moment, but I think that's the plan of us now that we're looking at.
No, fair. I mean, Vickers, you've been one person, I mean, in this pod and the recordings that's spoken about Francke Horn a few times, and obviously his ability on the field. I mean, looking at the three guys now, Ivan Roos, Cameron Hanekom, and now Francke Horn, I mean, we know that the other two have already been in the setup of the Springboks. Hanekom being more recent, because I think Ivan Roos was injured at the particular time. Do you think Francke Horn would get a chance at some point? Because now there's rumors that he might be going overseas, which probably hampers his chances of being selected by Rassie. But I mean, from what you've seen from a Hanekom, from a Francke Horn, does he possess the skill set? Does he possess the go forward? Does he possess all the other abilities that the other two are presenting at this point from a number 8 perspective in the South African context?
I think Jade put it perfectly. I think he is a guy that is similar to Jasper, but for me, I think if he goes overseas, it will probably be the best decision that he can make, because I honestly don't see that he will be involved in the Springbok squad unless, obviously, the guys pick up a lot of injuries. We all know what the head coach does in the Springbok level. He always bloods in the guys that he wants to use in the next World Cup, and I feel like because it's 2025 already, chances are of him getting an opportunity, it will be obviously a little bit tough. Especially, you must remember, Rassie is also preparing now the Springbok team to face New Zealand in 2026. So I don't think he will take a chance in bringing in someone new who's still going to learn the structures. I also do feel that a guy like Francke Horn, had he been in a team with a little bit more, I'm going to say pedigree, but I'm not in disrespect or anything of the Lions, but if he would be in a team like the Stormers, Sharks or Bulls, I think he would have definitely been called into the squad, because obviously we all know, and also the props, it also goes with your forwards, your tight five. How strong is your tight five? And I don't think the Lions tight five does give him that obviously freedom as an 8, although he does run quite a lot on the touch lines and he's quite good on the ground as well. And I also like his offloads. He's got a kick. He can kick. Very surprisingly, for his size, he can kicks well actually. He's created a couple of tries through his kicks. So for me, I think, yeah, going overseas would be probably the best decision he can make. But I do feel if he wants to maybe get a look at in future, then maybe he must follow what Jesper Wiese did: go overseas and find a team with the good, obviously with the good tight five and dominate as well. So maybe he will get up a call up from there.
Interesting. I mean, Jade last week was talking about Sharks getting a very good 8th man. And I mean, if they have to look overseas for a strong ball carrier, they're looking in the wrong direction. It's literally 500 kilometers away from Durban. Maybe they can start looking at him and bringing him to the Sharks actually going forward. I mean, him and Ruan Fenter, the other flanker, I think they have enough beef. They have enough meat on them to add onto that Sharks pack, because the Sharks are lacking, man, some beef and some good, strong South African ball carriers. Jade?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to say that, the Sharks would be perfect for him, and he'd be perfect for the Sharks. But I know I just want to end this off. We always compare, and there's always a few guys knocking on the door every year in terms of box selection, and I think me is maybe one as well. But we just got to remember that not every good player will be a Springbok. Not every good player will be a Springbok South Africa, and if you're not a Springbok, it doesn't make you a bad player. So some guys just won't be Boks, and some guys will be Boks. So, but it doesn't make them a bad player. I mean, you look at Aji and Trokkie sitting overseas as well. They're not Boks, but they're not bad players, and they're both number 8s.
I thought you were talking about Plumtree, mate. Sorry.
No, Aji and Trokkie.
Oh man, Blommetjes and Alistair Coetzee not in the same conversation. Griffin.
Yeah, so just a couple of stats on comparing the two. So Francke Horn, so far this season in just the URC, not taking into account Challenge Cup, has 31 tackles, 23 into contact. I'm trying not to make this too confusing. 40% dominant carries, 67% gain line success, 25% tackle evasion. Whereas Hanekom has 48 carries into contact, 47% dominance, 74% gain line success, and 20% tackle evasion. And I can tell you that Hanekom's defensive stats are quite clear of Francke Horn as well. So statistically, it's not actually that close. The stats tell you that Hanekom is clearly the better player.
Damn. I love stats. I don't have any issues with stats. But this takes away from our eye test element
It does,
as well.
it does, and stats aren't everything. The eye test is important, and Hanekom's playing for a better team.
Fair. Those are good points, Hugh. Very good points. But obviously, the stats in this particular conversation then also gives you an idea of how far apart or how far Hanekom is away from Francke Horn in this situation, and which is quite clear. And obviously, like Vuyo said, and like you've just said now, Hugh, as well, that maybe just playing for the Lions is not giving Francke Horn maybe the step up at this current point.
Yeah, and also is like a comparison. Hanekom's got 6 jackal turnovers in the league this year. Francke Horn has got none. So there's more to it than just the ball carrying.
Fair enough. No, 100%. As a complete player, you must be able to give us more numbers around the park, right? Tackle, defense. Also, maybe those are also some of the things that Rassi is looking at, regardless of the team you are playing for. He wants to see you work off the ball because Springboks don't use a lot of ball. So the game tactics or the game understanding probably needs to come from not having ball in hand. What do you do when your team is defending? Because I mean, a lot of South Africa's attack is defense, basically. Moving along, guys. This time now we've gone to the what is it? Open mic, gents, for the next 5 minutes. Any thoughts or anything that has happened that we haven't touched on this past week regarding rugby? And obviously, if there is one or two questions from the listeners, then we can maybe touch on that. And then, yeah, so we've only got a 5 minute slot, ladies and gents. So you try and make it as quick and sharp and straight to the point as possible. Okay, not wasting any time. TP. TP, not wasting any time. Yes, go ahead. Hello, testing 1 2 3. Can you hear me? Ah, there he is. South African load shedding is a problem, guys.
No, so I mean, just a quick question for the pundits here, Mr. Vuyo Zanka and Jade and you. We want all the South African players back, fair enough, but is the quality of coaching going to change for those guys to make an impact? Just watching that Sharks game now, where they just got humiliated, like filled with Springboks up front, at the back, but still can't put a game together against a quality French side that where you can really say, okay, these guys are really boxed because they not only stand out at national level, but they stand out at club level as well. So bringing all those guys back from overseas, is it really going to make that big of a difference if the coaching still remains the same?
Jade Vickers, jump in there.
Yep. So I think it's yeah. I do get the question there. Hello. I think brother, the most difficult thing is that for me, from an outsider, I would obviously be the one to say maybe no, it's not gonna make a difference. But if we look at obviously from an if I look at it from an outside perspective, I think it all depends on which players that come back and where do they go, which provinces they go to, and also we're talking about. I think obviously this question is coming from the comments of Jake, what he made, the comments. So I don't know if this is it will make a difference. It all depends on like I said, where they go and what is the situation within that particular province. So for me, I always say it's good and well to have all the players that you need. If you're not going to be able to use them, then it's pointless.
Jade, don't be shy, and Hugh.
No. Listen, TP's pushing on this coaching story. He's got some agenda going here, but no, I agree. You know, if we're gonna get those players in, but TP also look at the experience. Those guys coming back, like I said, from Japan, what experience they will bring. I mean, a guy like Faf, you know, coming back from Japan would be like a really a coach to a few younger halfbacks, you know, at the Bulls or Sharks, for example. So I think that you look at that experience as well. And I mean, also, you know, quality and world-class players can work with any coach. So for me, yeah, we do know there is a coaching issue in South Africa, but also look at the experience that those guys will be bringing back.
Yeah, fair enough. Anyone else within the listeners with a question from this past weekend or the previous weeks regarding rugby related? We're not talking Man United and Arsenal here. All right. If there's nothing, ladies and gents, then I think that will bring us to the end of this particular segment for the Sunday. Thank you very much for joining in. Thank you very much for listening as well. The pod will be up on Spotify and will be up on Apple Podcast, YouTube if you prefer as well. And yeah, so looking forward to next week, guys. I think we'll start the build up to the Six Nations next week. Obviously, we can look into certain key players and which country do we believe will be taking Six Nations 2025. Thank you for listening to the Rugby Scoop podcast. Thank you, Hugh. Thank you, Jade. Thank you, Vuyo. Thank you also to the listeners. And thank you, TP, for the question. And yeah, looking forward to more questions. We'll have more of these open mics from next week onwards. We'll dedicate a good 5 minutes. Maybe you can start thinking about a question you would like to ask in the following weeks. Thank you, guys, and have a wonderful Sunday. It's been great. It's been great. Have a wonderful week ahead. Rugby Scoop. Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.